morning everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Today we are presenting webinar on Dyslexia or in the workplace, which has been organized by Applied Science and Humanities Department of Parul Polytechnic Institute, Parul University. An employer's main concern is whether or not a person can do their job properly in a timely and efficient manner. Hence, the main aim of this webinar is how to cope up with the dyslexia in the workplace. That will generally mean you have to spend more time on some things. I, Vaishali Nathwani, would like to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Choi Suling, the co-founder of Alters Academy from Malaysia. She is Malaysia's first academic language therapist. She obtained her PhD in 2013 from the University Malaya. She wrote the Start for 8 years and honed her writing skills. In 2005, she was awarded the National Endowment for the Arts Fellow by Duke University. As a certified structure specialist, she provides targeted one-to-one reading instruction to children with complex reading and writing profiles. She has successfully taught children with dyslexia. A committed allied health professional, she works closely with speech therapist departments at school to help children develop lifelong reading skills. It is a pleasure to welcome you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Vaishali. Okay.
And you can start with the session, ma'am.
Okay, let me open my screen. Okay. All right. Can everybody see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So, first of all, thank you very much to Parul University for having me today to talk on this topic. So, it's very important for students to know. I mean, some students may not know that they have this condition, but some do. And then, especially when it comes to university students, they are already coming to a stage where they are, going to leave school and going into a workplace. And I think it's important for them to be able to know how to cope when they get out there, right? So, and so this is just a little bit of my background. I've started out in doing this because mainly because of my kids. They are actually dyslexic. So, and that was how it started for me. And I think the journey has been very rewarding because I'm able to see them grow, and subsequently I use the skills to also help other children as well. Okay, so this is what our center looks like. Okay, so firstly, let's begin with definition. When we say dyslexia, not many people know or can imagine what this condition is about, right? So this is actually part under what we call a condition called learning difficulties, so or LD in short. So learning difficulties are actually a group of disorders involving significant difficulties in the acquisition of listening, speaking, reading, writing, reasoning, and mathematical skills, right? So basically, these are related to language and also maths. Okay, and overall, it doesn't actually affect the developmental milestones or the development of the child, right? Other than these certain areas, and which is why disorders like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia are also known as specific learning disorders because it only affects them in one specific area. Other than that, they are perfectly normal kids, right? They can talk, they can, communicate and do many other things like, other typical children. Okay, so the three Ds in learning difficulty, these are the three main Ds. The first one is dyslexia. Dyslexia means difficulty with reading. It comes from the term lexia, or the word. So you will find, those with reading difficulties in this category. Okay, and whereas dysgraphia is difficulty with writing. So one is actually the input. They see a symbol, but they find it difficult to decode it. And the other one is output, right? They have difficulty writing it. So they may have a letter in mind, but they have difficulty writing it out. Or they may have a sentence in mind, but they can't write it out, right? So putting thought to the pen. And then the last one is actually dyscalculia, the third D, which is difficulty with maths, all right? Okay, so why I say that, dyslexia is actually one of the very manageable conditions is because a lot of kids with dyslexia actually grow up to be quite successful individuals. Of course, not everyone will be, successful, but, they can lead a very normal life. Okay, so here are some of the more famous dyslexics. I think you can recognize some of their faces. So like Albert Einstein, for example. So he's one of the greatest scientists, of all time. And then, for example, like Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, he's the founder of Facebook. And then you have like Richard Branson. So Richard Branson is the multi-billionaire who owns the airline, Virgin Airlines. And then you also have Lee Kuan Yew, not too far from us, Malaysia. So Lee Kuan Yew he was the former Prime Minister of Singapore. So, and he has, although he has difficulty with reading, but he has very good verbal skills, right? When you listen to him give a speech, he's able to convert people and win their hearts and minds. Okay, so you can see that God is very fair. When they take away something, when something is taken away, it's compensated by something else. So these individuals, when we have dyslexia, we call it a left brain deficit. So certain functions of the left brain may not be as efficient as the normal typical person. So, and then it's compensated by something else, right? So, and you can see that, for example, the great scientists like Albert Einstein. So, and he can see things like certain formulas, he can solve them. And in fact, if the British intelligence, I was told, okay, or I read somewhere, they actually hired dyslexic hackers, right? And the reason why is because they can actually, because they see things very differently, they can actually see patterns, they can spot certain things that normal individuals can't. Never mind that they can't read or spell properly, but they can do those things, right? So someone like Mark Zuckerberg, he can think of a very good social communication idea like Facebook. And Richard Branson, right? He's got very good charisma, right? So even though he doesn't excel in school, he's a dropout, but because of his charismatic nature, his leadership skills and all that, so he's able to build a multi-million-dollar business. And likewise, like what I mentioned with Lee Kuan Yew as well, okay? So he's a leader of Singapore. Okay, so since most of the audience are like, in their 20s, university age group, so I will talk a little bit more about adults with dyslexia, okay? So these are some of the things that maybe you have, all right? Is this you, okay? You may say one thing, but you may think of something, but say something else. Does that happen to you? Right? So you may have a thought, and then after that, but what comes out from your mouth is something else. Right? So this could be one of the signs, okay? What did I just read again? So when you're reading a passage, sometimes you feel that, you finish that whole passage, but then you realize that nothing has gone in, and you have to reread it. Understand or you can't read, you can, but you just either lost your focus or it's just not going in, right? So that's one. Another, and I'm lost. Okay, dyslexics have very bad sense of direction. So they need to have, either Waze or Google Maps to get around. And in fact, they have they even have difficulty identifying which one is right and which one is left, right? So their sense of direction is quite bad. So if you're always getting lost, can't even find your way to the lecture hall, then you may be an adult with dyslexia. Okay. And yeah, this one, sorry, I mentioned earlier, turn left, no, the other left. Okay, so you have difficulty identifying which hand is right, which hand is left, which left, this left or that left. Okay, so that's another sign. And you have difficulty remembering dates, right? So you make sure that your wife or your girlfriend's birthday or anniversary is set on repeat in the Google Calendar so that you don't get into trouble, right? So this is another area that you can look at. So when they're younger, the sense of time is very bad. They cannot read, the analog clock. They have to rely on the digital clock to tell time. Even the sense of months, it takes a long time for a person with dyslexia to understand that there are 12 months in a year, or there are 31 days or 30 days in a month, or how many weeks there are in a month, right? The sense of time is not very good. Okay, and before posting on social media, right, nowadays, let me spell check first. So obviously you either have this fear of getting it wrong, or you not confident, or that you just need to get it right in case I get laughed at after I post it and I can't delete it, right? So before posting, you want to spell check something first. So these are some of the signs that you may be an adult with dyslexia. Okay, so but having said that, some people with dyslexia may have this condition. There are different severities in terms of the condition. So those with very mild symptoms, they just go through life not really knowing that they have it, right? But those with like more severe symptoms, then they will struggle a bit more, and it'll be more evident that they have a problem. So in terms of what to do next, if let's say you suspect that you may have this condition, the first thing is to see a psychologist, okay, to get a diagnosis. So then the diagnosis will be able to tell whether you have this condition or not. Some people feel that they don't want to be diagnosed because they don't want to put a label on themselves, whereas some people feel that with a diagnosis, they feel a bit more liberated, right? They finally understand that sometimes they feel that, I don't want to use the word, but sometimes they feel that they're stupid or not achieving, or they're wondering what's wrong with me, that kind of feeling. So once they get the diagnosis, they feel very much liberated, and they know that, oh, okay, this is happening because I have this condition, and it's really not my fault, right? That kind of feeling. So after that diagnosis, if you're a younger child, then usually we would start off with intervention, right? So intervention, and then subsequently there's also accommodation. Accommodation means in schools or universities, they can provide certain assistance or support. And the last one is the most important when you get into the workplace, to make use of assistive technologies. Okay. So the first one, intervention, I won't touch much on this because most adults won't do this, right? They have actually come to a point where they feel quite okay, they can get along in life, and they have already managed, with in their own way. Okay, they found their own coping mechanisms, so they won't go into this. But for younger kids, they're still struggling in school, then we would recommend that they do speech therapy and also academic language therapy, which is what we do here. Okay, the Octon-Gillingham approach. So this is both areas of language. Okay, and what this means is that it will help them in terms of like vocabulary, reading skills, and so forth. Okay, and if let's say you are in school and you're taking exams and so forth, with the diagnosis, you can actually apply for accommodation. What is accommodation? So, for example, let's say if you are really struggling, with writing, like let's say if you have dysgraphia, the output is really difficult. But you know the answer. You can understand the requirements of the question. It's just that you have difficulty getting it out. So then the school or the universities may provide extra time during examinations, or they may provide computers to type the answers out instead of writing. Okay. And for those who really can't read, they may also provide a reader to help them read a certain word that may be really difficult so that they can understand the context. And sometimes they may also arrange a separate room for them to take the exam so that they are not so distracted, or they don't feel so stressed, or they don't have the anxiety issues and so forth. Okay, this is the support. And once you get into the workplace, or even in school now, in uni now, you should be learning how to use different types of tools. And we are very lucky because in this age, compared to, let's say, if we were in the 70s or 80s or even the early 90s, right? There's so many tools that we can use, so many apps that we can use, to help us to read and write. So this includes like speech to text technology. So you don't even have to write. You just press that little icon there that looks like a mic, and you speak into it, and then the text will just come out, right? So it's so convenient. And after the text has come out, you can use all the different types of language checkers. So even the simple Microsoft Word document has checking tools. You can check the spelling, you can check the grammar, and it can even give you a percentage of how well you have written, right? If you're 80% and above or something like that, then your passage is good to go, or good for submission, right? And writing also. And there are some sites that even help you to write, but I wouldn't go with that yet. Okay, so organizers. There are many types of apps that helps you to organize. So even in your handphone itself, right? Everyone has one nowadays. Sometimes some people even have two, right? So you have the alarm clock, you have the calendar, you have checklists. So everything is there, right? There's no reason for you to miss something or not get organized. And directions. If you're really bad with directions, there's Waze, there's Google Maps, and so forth. So there are many, many tools that you can use to help you to get by, all right? Okay, so once you get into the workforce, I would say before you even go into the workforce, you might want to consider a few things, right? First is you might want to check or consult with a few headhunters or companies to see which organization has an inclusive culture. So this may be a new term to you, inclusive. So inclusive means that the company has in place in their policy to take in, let's say, maybe they have a certain percentage, of quota for women to be in the organization. They also accept, people with disabilities. They have a high tolerance culture and so forth. So those are the kind of companies that you might want to try to, submit your resume and to get in. So that would be a good start. And secondly, you might want to also declare or let your HR department know, your boss and your team leader as well, that you have this kind of condition. So, and this is just to let them know that, these are my weaknesses or my limitations. And so when they give you a task, they are aware, and they don't find fault with you for not performing to a certain expectation that they have, right? Or they may give you a task, and then they may, get someone to guide you more, or suggest a certain tool that you can use to, to get that task done, right? So some individuals may be a bit shy, they don't want to tell everybody, but at minimum, you should also at least tell your HR, your boss, and also a team leader, okay? Then I would say choose your friends and colleagues wisely as well, right? Who you mix with. You want to mix with those who are more positive, have a more positive mindset, who are more empathetic, who are more patient, more understanding, right? There are some people who are not, that those might not be your go-to person to turn to if you need someone to talk to, right? And what happens, if you end up in a workplace that is non-inclusive, right? Not all of us are very lucky to get into the company that we want to work in. So some companies, in fact, I would say most companies are non-inclusive, right? And there's very little knowledge or even understanding of what dyslexia is, or very little or low tolerance of workers with disability, I would say, right? So in this case, for yourself, if you have come this far to university, I think you have the ability to step up your own game, right? You can actually self-learn, or there are many free tools, YouTube videos and whatever. You can step up your game on how to use the assistive technologies, right? I'm sure some students are much better than me in all these technologies as well. So you need to be able to learn how to use different tools to help you with whatever job scope there is, okay? And secondly, ask for help, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help. By this, I don't mean like every single thing you ask for help, but if you really need some guidance, if you find some difficulty doing something, then I think you should highlight it and then make it known as well. All right. And of course, the last one is similar to the other one. Identify colleagues who are empathetic, right? So, of course, in a work culture or company that is inclusive, you may find more of this type of people. In a non-inclusive environment, most likely there'll be less, right? And it may be very competitive as well. Okay, so what you should not do is, firstly, to use your condition as an excuse to gain sympathy, or to find it as a reason for not completing tasks and not get more work, for example. All right, this is what we call learned helplessness. You can do it, but you make yourself seem like, well, I can't, I'm so helpless, I can't do this, I can't do that. So don't use it as an excuse, because if there are so many successful dyslexics out there, you can be actually one of them, right? So, and in fact, you may have certain talents that other people don't. So make use of those, right? So don't use your condition as an excuse. And secondly, this is mainly what you call that, for mental health, right? So don't suffer in silence. I know, like, if you're a fresh graduate, you may be afraid to highlight something or to say something, or you feel that your colleagues may laugh at you because you don't know how to do all these things. So I think it's okay to highlight, especially to your team leader or your boss, which is why I mentioned that these are the few key people that you should always keep an open communication with, and be totally transparent with them. Okay. And the empathetic friend that you identify, even if they do nothing else, at least they lend you an ear. Okay. So and if you've done everything that you can, and you still find that the culture is not for you, and they are expecting things that you really can't do, then I would say don't stay in a toxic environment. Okay, there are many things that you can do, or many other places that you can try out. So don't be afraid. Okay. So what you can do is to speak to a professional career counselor, right, on your career options or your career path. So even before you graduate. So let's say, for example, an engineer. So in engineering itself, there are many different things or specialization. So some may be focused more on project management. Some may do more technical or scientific related kind of stuff. Some may do research. Some may do sales, right? So depending on, so find out all the different options they are just within, engineering itself, for example. Then you can see, okay, I think this is something that I can do better. Then you may then carve your career towards that particular direction, right? So once you know what are the options, then you can identify a role that best suits your talents and strengths. Then you stay away from those that are your weaknesses, right? You want to work on your strengths. And choose a supportive boss over salary or prestige. Okay, so someone young may want to, start off in multinational because it's a big global brand name, or the salary is much higher or whatever. But if every day you come home and you feel like feel very defeated, feel very drained or whatever, then it's obviously not very good for your mental health, right? And a supportive boss is someone who actually will teach you, guide you, understand your difficulties, and of course, when I say that, you don't step over the line, okay? They will give you the support that you need. So, if you were to choose between two companies, choose one that has a more supportive boss. Okay, and the next one is, most importantly, you must love what you do, right? This is what we call passion. So be excited, be interested, be curious, and you will get further in where you want to be, right? And worst come to worst, if you find that something is not right for you, do not be afraid to switch careers or explore other opportunities, right? So I know many people who are law graduates, but eventually become artists, or they are, I don't know, psychologists, but they become musicians or whatever, right? So it doesn't really matter what you start off with. You may just find something that's more suitable for you later on, right? I know in some cultures, parents typically prefer children to be doctors, accountants, engineers, and so forth. But see where that goes, right? You can start off with that first, and then find your way from there. Okay, so this is all for my presentation. Now is the time for Q&A if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time with us and for this presentation. Uh, there are some questions from our end, madam. Sometimes it happens that as the parents come to know about the dyslexia of their children, right? Then they feel very shy about that thing. So, what is the way that they can come out of it, according to
Um,
you? Huh.
so they're shy to tell the team, is it, that they have this
Yes,
condition?
yes, yes,
Okay.
sir.
So first of all, I would say start by telling the HR, the boss, and the team leader first. Okay, and then after that, within your team itself, once you get to know the group members better, okay, you may find that certain people you click with a bit more. Okay, so you might want to start, if you feel that you feel a bit safer with that person, then you can actually tell that person that you have that condition. So, but essentially, dyslexia is nothing. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's just a difficulty with learning, and if you can graduate from university, and I think that's a great achievement, right? In spite of that difficulty, right? You can overcome all this and you graduate. So that means in terms of your determination, your ability, your grades, you are better off than a normal person, right? You must see yourself that way. You have overcome. If you have more difficulty, you have more to overcome, and that means you're a stronger person actually, right? Compared to someone who hasn't suffered much and go through life quite easily. Yeah.
Yes.
So you should
Right.
be like proud of yourself, yeah, for getting
Yes.
that.
So it's a duty of parents to support their child, whether he or she is normal or concerning that dyslexia, right?
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
But,
correct.
yes. So, what does dyslexia affect in our day-to-day routine, ma'am?
Well, like some of the symptoms that I've mentioned, for example, the speech, right? Sometimes you may think of one thing, but you say something else. So if it's not too offensive, you can still get away with it, right? Or, oops, I actually meant something else, but I said this. Then the other ones is like, the sense of direction, getting lost. Um, so some people, even if they've traveled that same road, for the past 5 years or 10 years, they will still ask how to go there, that sort of thing. So then, now with technology, you have Google Maps, you have Waze. So even if you want to go to, the next block classroom, and if you can't get there, you also can use Waze because there's a walk option. You can find your way by walking, or you can find your way by driving, and so forth. So that's one. So and the other one that would be more common is actually the organizational skills, right? Planning in terms of like knowing what times what starts and things like that. So again, now we have Google Calendar, we have Microsoft Outlook with all these different features. So then you can use that. So I would say compared to 10, 20 years ago, a person with dyslexia with this kind of symptoms will be able to function a lot better. There are less hindrances in terms of the day to day. Yeah. And once if you forget your wife's anniversary or birthday, you start it to repeat in the Google Calendar, then you won't get into trouble lah.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's true, ma'am. Yeah. Yes. So, after diagnosis of dyslexia, right, the first step is to go to a psychiatrist or the concerned person for treatment. Fine.
Um, the psychologists and the developmental pediatricians would be
Yeah.
the medical professionals who would uh, perform the diagnosis, right? So once the diagnosis is already confirmed, then they would recommend therapies that they will need to go for. So let's say if they have a lot of like fine or gross motor skills, kind of difficulties, then they may be recommended to do occupational therapy. Or if let's say like speech delay is also one of the symptoms of dyslexia as well. Not everybody has speech delay, but some may have because dyslexia, after all, is a language disability. So they may recommend you to go for speech therapy. And then, of course, the most important one is the academic language therapy, which is what we do. We teach children to read. So all this time together, then the child will be able to. Once the child is able to read, they are able to perform better at school. By performing better, I don't mean grades. Not everything has to do with grades, but overall, the quality of school life for them will be better. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. So, does it can be cured permanently or it remains at some stage of time?
Mm. Dyslexia is not a disease, so there's no cure. It's a neurological condition, so this is already set right in the brain. So it's a lifelong condition, so there's no cure for it, right? So, but what a person can do is actually to manage it better. So the management strategies are number one, therapy, okay, at the early stage. So if you're a young child, a young student, then intervention of the therapy is very important, right? So when you're an adult, young adult or a teenager or an adult, then you need to find support in terms of like the assistive technologies, those tools that will help you to get by in your day-to-day work. Yeah.
What affects is dyslexia, right? But workplace, then school, other things that affects this thing.
What affects dyslexia? You mean like how dyslexia, uh, you know, person with dyslexia is affected
Yes,
in different
yes. Hmm.
environments? Um, well, I think at the early stage, when they are at school, they will not enjoy school, right? School is something that they don't want to, it's not the favorite thing or place to go to. The reason being is that because they have, they even at a young age, they will realize that they are different from other students, right? And then when they see that, oh, this person can read, but I can't, and they can do this, but I can't, right? They will feel it on, even though it's not explicitly stated. So and this will then first you will see a lot of excuses coming up. Oh, I'm sick, I think I got stomach ache, I got fever, all these excuses will come out lah. Different kinds of disease will come out. So but actually they are not purposely trying to skip school or whatever. It's just that the struggle is real, the fear is real, right? So even at a young age, they need to take care of their face. Uh, so if the friend can read, they cannot read, they also feel shy, right? So school becomes a very unpleasant place for them, right? And when they go into the teenage years, so like I'm not sure how the exam system is in India, but in Malaysia you have like the year six, but now that we've abolished the year six exams, then you have we call it PT3 lah. So when they're about 15 years old, there's another exam. So if let's say the student at this stage do not clear that exam, then what will happen is that they will actually uh, drop out of school, right? Because the next level, which is your IGCSE or A level equivalent, if they can't clear the PT3 level, the 15-year-old level, then there's no point going up to the next level, right? So what will happen at this stage is that once they drop out of school, if let's say their families are very supportive, they either have a family business, they have a mentor who can guide them, or maybe they can enroll them into school that are more skill-based, skill-based kind of schooling, then they can still, graduate or come out to have very successful careers, right? It doesn't mean that once you drop out when you're 15 years old, there's no chance at all for you, right? So that's the impact in the secondary school. So, but if you get into university, then that's very good already, right? That means you have actually you've overcome the difficulties in some way, in your own way, and you have arrived at university and you can actually graduate, right? So that's an amazing achievement on its own, right? Reaching all the way up there. So and the only thing is after in universities, most universities I know will have a support system for those with disabilities, right? And you can be assured that they are more it's quite a safe place to be, I think, in a university. But once they get out there into the working world, perhaps it's a different ballgame. A lot of people are more competitive. They want to make more money. They want to get the promotion, and things like that, right? So the place that you work with, the work culture, how you step up your own game, and I think that's important.
Okay. Yes. So uh, they have to move on after crossing one and another step.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yes, because sometimes it happens that after moving ahead from one step, if they get failure in that step, they move backward also.
Mm,
Because it is very tough situation for them to convey their message to the society, because society sometimes do not accept that thing.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yes, so that is very tough situation for them, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important for the community to be more aware,
Yes.
of what this condition is just one small area of their lives that they have a difficulty with, right? So it's not a major, life-changing event, for example, So and they do need the support of the parents, the support of the
Yes.
teachers, the support
Yes.
of the workplace, for them to move on. And I would say most of them are actually quite strong individuals already to be able to get that far. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes, ma'am. I think we have covered all the questions from our end. Yes, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yes, thank you so much, ma'am, for joining with us today and giving us your valuable time.
Yeah. Welcome.
It was very nice meeting to you. And
Thank you.
I would like to thank the head of our department, Mr. Hemal Patel, sir, the HO of our institute, Dr. Jatin Vaidya, the president of our university, Dr. Devanshu Patel, sir, for motivating and supporting us continuously for conducting such webinars. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay. Bye
bye.
bye.